I told you to stop right there. Step away from that door now.
Officer, I am in the middle of an emergency brain surgery procedure.
You aren't doing anything but coming with me for questioning, Doctor.
I am Dr. Vance, the Chief of Surgery, and your direct superior.
I don't care if you're the Pope. You're trespassing in this wing.
And you are officially relieved of your duties.
The hospital's high-definition security recording captured everything, from the sterile glare of the scrub in sinks to the moment the scalpel-sharp focus of a life-saving procedure was shattered by a badge. Officer Miller saw a woman who didn't belong. The camera saw a tragedy in the making. What Miller had absolutely no idea about was that the woman he was aggressively pinning against the swinging doors of Operating Room 4 wasn't just a trespasser. She was the heartbeat of the entire surgical wing. While Miller expected panic, pleas, or a typical guilty reaction, he was met with a chilling professional composure that should have been his first warning sign. This wasn't a suspect. This was Dr. Aaliyah Vance, a double board-certified neurosurgeon, a fellow of the American College of Surgeons, and the woman who literally signs Miller's paychecks. By the time the dust settled on this early morning confrontation, Miller's power trip would result in a permanent black mark on his record and an eye-watering $3 million loss for the hospital administration. This is a story of what happens when ego meets expertise at 3 in the morning. Before we dive deeper into this shocking story, I need you to do something for me right now. Drop a comment below and tell me, if you were mid-surgery and security tried to arrest you, would you stay calm like Dr. Vance or would you lose it? Type "stay calm" or "lose it" in the comments. Also, if you believe in holding power-tripping officials accountable, hit that subscribe button right now. You won't want to miss how this escalates. Dr. Aaliyah Vance was never someone who expected the red carpet rolled out for her, despite having every reason to demand it. At 38 years old, she had already spent 15 years in the high-pressure world of neurosurgery, a field where the margin for error is measured in millimeters. She wasn't just a doctor, she was the Chief of Neurosurgery at one of the top-rated trauma centers in the country. Her resume was a staggering list of firsts and bests. Over the course of her career, Dr. Vance had successfully performed over 2,000 complex brain surgeries, maintaining a success rate that put her in the top 1% of surgeons globally. She was the recipient of the prestigious Gold Scalpel Award 3 years running, and had been published in the New England Journal of Medicine for her pioneering work in minimally invasive tumor resections. Beyond the accolades, she was known by her staff as the anchor. In the middle of a chaotic code blue or a grueling 12-hour surgery, she was the one whose pulse never rose, whose voice never shook, and who treated every nurse and janitor with the same level of respect she gave the board of directors. She lived a quiet life in the suburbs, driving a modest SUV and spending her limited free time mentoring medical students from underrepresented backgrounds. She believed that hard work and excellence were the ultimate shields against prejudice. But on this particular Tuesday morning, she was reminded that even a chief's title can't always protect you from a biased assumption. It was 3 a.m., and Dr. Vance had just been called in for an emergency. A car accident victim was on the table with a rapidly expanding epidural hematoma. Every second she spent scrubbing in was a second the patient didn't have. She was focused, she was prepared, and she was doing exactly what she was born to do. She walked through the staff entrance, badge visible, heading toward the OR, expecting nothing more than a standard night of saving lives. She didn't realize that within 5 minutes, she would be fighting for her own dignity in the very hallway she commanded. The air in the surgical wing at 3:10 a.m. is always thick with the smell of industrial disinfectant and the low electric hum of life support machinery. Outside, a light rain was slicking the city streets. But inside, the atmosphere was sterile and silent, except for the rapid footsteps of Dr. Vance. She had parked her silver Volvo in her designated Chief of Surgery spot and moved through the side entrance using her encrypted keycard. She was wearing her signature charcoal gray North Face jacket over her street clothes, carrying her professional bag, heading straight for the locker room to change into her surgical blues. Meanwhile, Officer Miller was finishing a double shift. Miller was 45, a veteran of the hospital's private security force for 12 years, though his record was peppered with unnecessary force complaints that had always been swept under the rug. Miller prided himself on being a law and order guy, but his definition of order was often based on who he thought looked the part. When he saw a black woman in a hoodie walking briskly through the high-security corridor toward the OR, his internal alarm didn't suggest doctor on call. It suggested intruder. Miller didn't check the badge hanging from her lanyard. He didn't look at the surgical schedule on his tablet. He simply saw someone who didn't fit his mental image of a high-ranking medical official. He stepped out from the security alcove, his heavy boots echoing on the linoleum, his hand already hovering near his taser. He convinced himself he was protecting the hospital from a potential pharmaceutical thief. As Dr. Vance reached the scrub sinks, pulling her mask up and preparing to enter the sterile zone where her team was waiting, she heard the heavy clatter of a utility belt behind her. She didn't turn around immediately. She was focused on the patient. That was when Miller's voice cut through the silence like a jagged blade. "Officer Miller, hey, you! Stop right where you are and put your hands where I can see them." Dr. Vance froze, her hands already wet with antiseptic soap. She didn't turn around, maintaining the sterile protocol she had practiced thousands of times. She spoke clearly, her voice echoing off the stainless steel. "Victim, officer, I am in the middle of an emergency brain surgery procedure. My patient is on the table 5 feet behind those doors. Officer Miller, I don't care if you're making a sandwich in there. I told you to step away from the door and show me some ID right now. Victim, my ID is on the lanyard around my neck, which you would see if you stepped back and allowed me to finish scrubbing. I am Dr. Vance, the Chief of Surgery and your direct superior." Miller didn't budge. In his mind, the fact that she was asserting authority was a sign of defiance and resisting. He moved closer, entering her personal space, his chest nearly brushing her shoulder. "Officer Miller, I aren't doing anything but coming with me for questioning, doctor. You're trespassing in a restricted zone. Do you have any idea how many people try to sneak in here for meds? Victim, officer, look at the monitors. Look at the staff waiting for me. You are interfering with a life-saving operation. Under the precedent of Terry v. Ohio, you need reasonable articulable suspicion to detain me, and looking out of place in my own hospital doesn't qualify. Officer Miller, don't you quote law to me. I don't care if you're the Pope. You're trespassing in this wing until I say otherwise." The narration observes the shift in the room. 2 surgical nurses, Sarah and David, poked their heads out of, or for, their eyes wide with terror. They saw their chief being cornered by a man twice her size. David pulled out his phone, the lens reflecting the harsh overhead light. He knew exactly what was happening. Narration, Dr. Vance could feel the adrenaline, but she forced it down. She knew the legal stakes. She knew that if she moved too quickly, Miller would use it as an excuse for physical violence. She remained a statue of professional defiance. She was performing a mental checklist of the hospital's bylaws and the Fourth Amendment, even as her heart broke for the patient whose brain was currently exposed on the operating table. "Victim Miller, look at my face. You've seen me in the board meetings. You've seen me in the hallway. This is my department, and as of this second, you are officially relieved of your duties. Step aside. Officer Miller, you're under arrest for resisting. Turn around and put your hands back. You think because you put on some scrubs you're above the law? Victim, I am not above the law, officer, but you are currently violating it. This body cam on your chest is recording every word. It is recording your $8 million mistake. You are fired, Miller. Not tomorrow. Now, Officer Miller, that's it. Hands behind your back. Now." Narration, Miller reached for his handcuffs. The metallic clink sounded like a death knell in the quiet hallway. Dr. Vance didn't struggle. She knew that the moment he placed those cuffs on her, the hospital's liability skyrocketed into the millions. She looked directly into his body cam, her eyes burning with a calm, righteous fury. She wasn't just thinking about herself. She was thinking about the precedent this set. Have you ever seen someone double down on a mistake even when they were clearly wrong? Type yes or no in the comments. This is the moment Miller should have walked away, but his ego wouldn't let him. "Officer Miller, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you." "Victim, I hope it is, Miller. I hope every word is played in front of a jury of my peers. Narration as Miller jerked her arms back. The surgical team finally found their voices. Nurse Sarah screamed, "That's the chief! Are you insane? You're killing the patient." Miller ignored them, his focus entirely on subduing the woman who dared to tell him he was fired. He was blinded by a toxic cocktail of bias and bruised ego. He didn't see the nurse's recording. He didn't see the hospital administrator, who had been paged for the emergency, rounding the corner with an expression of pure horror. Miller was in his own world, a world where he was the king of the hallway and Dr. Vance was just another suspect. He tightened the cuffs until they bit into her wrists, a move designed to inflict pain and demand submission. But Dr. Vance didn't give him the satisfaction of a grimace. She simply turned her head toward her team. "Victim, David, call Dr. Aris. Tell him to take over the resection. Document every second this man keeps me from that room. Officer Miller, keep moving. No more talking." Narration: Miller began to march her toward the elevators, past the rows of stunned staff and the blinking lights of the life support systems. He was walking toward the end of his career, and he was doing it with a smile of smug satisfaction. The walk to the security office felt like a mile-long gauntlet. The air in the elevator was thick with the scent of Miller's sweat and the cold metallic smell of the handcuffs. Dr. Vance felt the plastic seat of the patrol car against her legs moments later, a sensation she never thought she'd experience. The interior of the car smelled of stale coffee and old upholstery. She sat in total silence, her mind racing not with fear, but with a cold, calculated strategy. When they arrived at the processing center, the fluorescent lights were even harsher than the hospital's. Miller marched her to the booking desk, his chest out, feeling like he'd made the bust of the year. He slammed her paperwork down on the counter. "Officer Miller, got a live one. Trespassing, resisting, and impersonating medical staff." The booking officer, a younger man named Officer Peterson, looked up from his computer. He looked at the paperwork. Then he looked at the woman in the charcoal gray jacket and surgical scrubs. His face went pale. He had seen Dr. Vance's face on the Employee of the Year plaque in the main lobby just that morning. He had also seen her on the local news 2 weeks prior when she performed a miracle surgery on a toddler. "Officer Peterson, Miller, do you have any idea who this is?" Officer Miller: "Yeah, some trespasser who thinks she owns the place. She was trying to sneak into her floor." Officer Peterson: "Miller, stop talking." "Ma'am, are you Dr. Aaliyah Vance?" "Victim, I am, and I need to speak with your watch commander and my attorney immediately. My patient's life is currently at risk because of your officer's actions." Peterson didn't even wait for Miller to respond. He scrambled for the phone, his hands shaking. Within seconds, he was on the line with the watch commander, Captain Sterling. "Officer Peterson, Captain, we have a massive problem. Miller just brought in the Chief of Neurosurgery in cuffs." "Yes, sir." "The chief." "No, sir, he didn't check the ID." "Yes, sir, I'm releasing her now." The reaction was a chain of pure panic. Captain Sterling practically flew out of his office, his tie half undone. He didn't even look at Miller as he grabbed the key to the handcuffs. "Captain Sterling, Dr. Vance, I am so sorry. This is a catastrophic misunderstanding. We are releasing you immediately. Miller, get in my office. Now!" "Victim, it wasn't a misunderstanding, Captain. It was a choice. I want my property returned. I want a copy of that Bodycam footage preserved, and I want a formal record of this arrest before I leave." "Captain Sterling, whatever you need, doctor. Please, we'll escort you back to the hospital." "Victim, no. You've done enough. I'll call my own transport. Do you think the supervisor, this apology was enough? Or should the whole department be held liable? Let me know below." Dr. Vance stood her ground even as she was being rescued. She watched as Miller, finally realizing the magnitude of his idiocy, slumped into a chair, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. He wasn't the king of the hallway anymore. He was a liability. Dr. Vance documented the names of every officer present, the time of her release, and the visible marks on her wrists. She was already building the case that would shake the city's infrastructure to its core. The sun was beginning to rise over the city when Dr. Vance finally left the police station. She didn't go home to sleep. Her first call was to her personal attorney, Marcus Thorne, a man known for dismantling civil rights violations. Her second call was to the ACLU. By 9:00 a.m., a formal intent to sue had been drafted. The police chief called her personally at 10:30 a.m. He offered a sincere apology and promised a thorough internal review. Dr. Vance's response was ice cold. She told him, "Your officer didn't just arrest a woman, he arrested a surgery. You can explain your apology to the family of the man who spent an extra 40 minutes under anesthesia because of your thorough review." She hung up. By noon, the video recorded by Nurse David had hit the internet. It was explosive. On TikTok, it hit 5 million views in 3 hours. By the evening news, it was at 20 million. The headline was everywhere. Hospital cop arrests brain surgeon mid-surgery. The public outrage was a tidal wave. The internal affairs investigation was launched immediately, but Dr. Vance didn't wait for them. She hired a private firm to dig into the hospital's security data. What they found was a damning pattern. Over the last 5 years, Officer Miller had stopped or detained staff members of color 42 times. In 38 of those cases, no crime had been committed. He had a statistical search rate for black employees that was 6 times higher than for white employees. The lawsuit was filed 48 hours later. It was a 112-page document that alleged 1. False arrest and imprisonment, 2. Battery, 3. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, 4. Civil rights violations under Section 1983, 5. Gross negligence resulting in medical endangerment. The investigation findings from Internal Affairs were released 2 weeks later. They were forced to admit that Miller had bypassed 3 separate protocols for identity verification. He had ignored direct orders from medical staff. He had escalated a non-violent encounter into a physical arrest without any legal basis. The report concluded that Miller's actions were wholly inconsistent with departmental training in basic human decency. The $8 million mistake Dr. Vance had mentioned in the hallway was no longer a threat. It was a mathematical certainty based on the damage to the hospital's reputation and the medical risks involved. Officer Miller didn't even make it to the end of the month. His termination letter cited 12 distinct policy violations, including conduct unbecoming of an officer, illegal detention, and failure to de-escalate. He tried to appeal through his union, claiming he was just doing his job and following his gut, but the union, seeing the viral footage and the statistical evidence of his bias, refused to back him. He was effectively blacklisted from law enforcement. No department would touch a man whose ego had cost the city millions. But the consequences didn't stop with one man. The Department of Justice launched a formal investigation into the hospital's security protocols and the local police department's training. The federal report was a staggering 400 pages, revealing a systemic lack of oversight. As part of a massive settlement, a federal consent decree was issued requiring 1. Mandatory implicit bias training for all security personnel, 2. The installation of secondary verification systems in all high security zones, 3. A complete overhaul of the stop and frisk policies within the hospital grounds, 4. An independent oversight board to review all security-led detentions, 5. The immediate termination of any officer with more than 2 sustained bias complaints. The final settlement amount was $8, $3 million. Dr. Vance didn't keep a single penny for herself. She established the Vance Equity in Medicine Foundation, dedicated to protecting medical professionals of color and providing legal resources for victims of bias policing. In a press conference that became as viral as the original video, Dr. Vance stood at a podium, her wrists still faintly scarred. She said, "This settlement isn't about the money, it's about the cost of a life. My patient survived, but only because my team was brave enough to record. We cannot rely on bravery to fix a broken system. We need accountability that hurts as much as the injustice does." Miller eventually moved to another state, unable to find work and security ever again. He lives in the shadow of his own mistake. Dr. Vance returned to the OR, her presence more commanding than ever. She didn't just save a brain that night, she forced a system to grow a conscience. This story matters because it forces us to look at the reality of power in America. Dr. Aaliyah Vance had every advantage. She had the education, the title, the income, and the legal knowledge to fight back. She knew her rights. She knew the names of the cases to cite, and she had a team of witnesses who respected her enough to risk their own jobs to film the encounter. And still, this happened. If a chief of neurosurgery in her own hospital can be handcuffed and dragged away while trying to save a life, imagine what happens to the person without those advantages. Imagine the person who doesn't know the Fourth Amendment. Imagine the person who doesn't have a surgical team filming for them. Imagine the person whose resisting isn't seen as professional defiance, but as an excuse for a tragedy. Accountability in this case was a success, but it was a success framed by a perfect storm of evidence and status. We shouldn't need a medical degree and a viral video to be treated with basic dignity. Not all cases end this way. For every Dr. Vance, there are 1,000 others whose stories are never told, whose settlements are never reached, and whose millers are still walking the halls with a badge. What was your biggest takeaway from this story? Do you think $8, $3 million was enough to change the system, or was it just a drop in the bucket? Greater than if you found this story as intense as I did, make sure to hit the like button and share this video. People need to know that this is still happening in 2026. Greater than, don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into police accountability and true crime stories that the mainstream media often misses. Greater than, drop a comment right now with the word justice if you stand with Dr. Vance. We're going to keep telling these stories until the footage stops looking like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.